everybody, and welcome to the world's favorite youth baseball podcast, Clearing the Bases, featuring Coach Jimmy Filangieri. I'm David Friedman, and I want to thank you for coming along this ride with us. How are we doing today, Coach?
Doing good, Dave. Seems to be a common theme lately of talking about working with younger kids. So yesterday I was asked to help out coach at 12U. Well, it's actually 10, 11, and 12 Little League team, and it's interesting. I'll tell you, it's really interesting.
So this is a town ball, which you haven't been involved with other than doing clinics and stuff, but you haven't been involved with a true town ball team for got to be a decade now or close to
it. Yeah, probably well over that.
So I'm sure based on all the conversations we've had with all of the coaches and trainers over the couple years we've been doing this podcast, I'm sure what you found was that the team was run like a well-oiled machine. All the fundamentals were down. They could hit, they could throw, they could catch, they could bunt. They knew how to run bases. They knew how to warm up correctly, right? It was easy.
All right, so number one, I guess I'm going to have to bite my tongue on that one, but we'll try to explain it in a civil way, I'll say, okay? First of all, the one thing I do have to say is that all of the coaches that were there, all of the parents that were there, behaved themselves. I liked the atmosphere that I saw. Everybody was cheering each other on, and, it was very nice. That I really liked. The only thing that, well, I shouldn't say the only thing, but watching this game, what came to mind is, I'm trying to think of an analogy, like to say, you're putting like a carpenter out there to build a house that's never put a nail in a piece of wood. Does that work?
It's not a bad. Yeah, that works. So obviously at the level that we've coached, we're getting these kids where they theoretically should have been in the oven for quite a while and should be good basis for a good recipe, and we're just doing the finishing touches at that point to get them to the next level. And what we talk about all the time, we got to keep changing the ingredients when the thing's already partially baked, and things don't generally work out real well for us under that circumstance. So now it said that, so this was a game. So are they having practices also, or are they just doing games?
No, they are having practices. It just so happened that because of the weather conditions that this team did not practice at all before this game yesterday. Nobody's fault. It's not like they weren't trying to. But my point was that I'm there and I'm trying to help out and I'm trying to do what I can. That time that we were on that field playing a quote-unquote game would have served the players much, much better if we were able to take both teams and do a little workout with them and start teaching them how to do these things correctly, rather than we've talked about this a million times, rather than just put them on the field for the sake of playing a game, which I don't know who we're trying to please with that game.
It's rough, and it does go back to the stuff that we talk about all the time, how important it is to develop young players and not just throw them into these situations. And especially Little League, Cal Ripken, where our kids played, has really gotten away from even having the wide range of age. And you think about how big of a difference there is between a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. So now you've got, I imagine there was a couple of kids there that could play. You got two teams, so there was probably 20, 24 kids, whatever. There had to be a couple kids that could play. A couple of 12-year-olds could probably throw fairly hard. And if you have them playing with a 10-year-old who is shaky, it's not just a frustrating situation. It's a dangerous situation.
Absolutely. I can't disagree with that. But I'll be honest with you. What I saw was, yes, obviously the first two pitchers that went out there, they could pitch somewhat. Were they throwing strikes consistently? No. But you could see that there was a little bit with the proper training, you might be able to develop this kid into a decent pitcher. You could see that. But anything after that, and again, we just happened to be on pitchers, but anything after that was just, there was no point to it. It was walk, pass ball. It's not baseball. You're not playing a game. You're watching kids throw a baseball and other kids just run to each base. It's not a game. I think there were 2 balls that were hit in the whole game.
All right. So, yeah. And so this is part of the crux of the problem of what we see with the downfall of town ball, which obviously a favorite topic of ours, going back from, I don't know, the first show that we did, second show that we did, something like that, where, okay, so anybody that is of decent quality is not going to want to play in those circumstances because it's not fun. So then they say, all right, well, I'm not going to play town ball. I'm only going to play travel ball. And then the quality of town ball continues to go down if we don't stop the bleeding and we don't set up where, again, put these coaches in a position where they can be successful by making sure that they know the basics of how to play the game and then how to teach the basics of how to play the game to these kids. And I know a hot button with you is just the basic warm up before the game. I from what you're describing, your head must have been ready to explode just from trying to watch that. The kids lining up opposite each other and trying to throw. How many times was a catch made versus how many times that ball hit the ground?
Well, I am so happy that you brought that up. So I get there, call the players out to the outfield, left field, and I'm getting ready. I actually had them doing maybe 1 or 2 stretches. And the umpire's telling me, okay, guys, come on in. We got to start the game. And I'm saying to myself, what is more important, starting this game, or is it more important for these boys to get loose and do the proper warm-up before they start playing a game? I don't care if you want it, it's supposed to be a 6-inning game. Okay, we're only going to play 3 innings because it took this team longer to loosen up. That's fine. To me, that's logical. That's the way it should be. Instead, It was, no, let's, stop what you're doing. Throw the kids out on the field. Come on, we're going to play a game. You're not playing a game.
Obviously, you understand from the umpire standpoint, he's not paid to watch the kids warm up. If it's and assuming there's no time limit, he's there for the 6 innings, then he wants to get it going. But there you go again. For fall ball, essentially inter squad, it's one town, it's 2 teams from the same town. What the hell do you need a badge umpire for? Have the coaches or parents just get out there and do it. Who cares?
Right. But, again, I would imagine, and this is just a guess, but I would imagine they use a patch umpire because if they had a mom or dad or, like you said, an opposing coach doing it, then there's probably going to be fights and arguments and arguing over stuff that doesn't matter. So they figure, well, let's bring in a professional. This way people will leave him alone. I don't know. Like I said, I would have said, look, let's make this a 3-inning game. Let me get these kids loose because this is what they need to know. And then we could play 3 innings and let them run around the field. It'll be nice.
Right. Yeah, it's again, there's so many just core issues with the whole situation. So get there. Why not say you allot 2 hours of time for this whole thing? So an hour to warm up and practice, do some drills, and then do a game with the second hour. And if you get 3 innings or 4 innings or whatever, it's town league fall ball.
Yes.
There's no all-stars. There's no championship. There's 2 teams. There's no playoffs, no championship, whatever. So what is the point? I think that goes to the first thing that you said to me when we were talking about this was, what is the point?
Right.
To say we played a game?
Right.
Awesome. Check that box. Check that box. Great. Yay. And nobody's happy.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't want to give the impression of, because I'll be honest with you, all the parents left the field. Everybody was smiling and, everything was fine. It wasn't like anybody looked like they were upset. But I think it goes back to the fact that they don't know any better. All they know is that their son was out on the field and he was running around and he looked like he was having a good time running around. But nobody learned anything. That's the thing that bothers me about it. Nobody learned anything yesterday. I don't know.
I'm gonna disagree with you there, and I'm not saying that your eyes are lying to you. You're certainly not lying to me or the listeners here, but nobody's happy with that situation if it's the way you're describing it to me. 2 hits, and two kids hit the ball legitimately during a game and it's a walkathon?
I don't know. I mean, Dave, I really don't know. I can't say, but you were talking about travel ball versus the Little League stuff. You mentioned something about that. What I saw yesterday really makes me more aware of the fact that what's happening is these Little Leagues are being raped by travel ball organizations, because it seemed to me, and I don't know, maybe I'm getting old, maybe my recollection is bad, but the talent level at 12U back when I did it was a lot better than what I saw yesterday. So I think that those players that maybe do have a little bit of ability are all playing travel baseball, and the towns are stuck with what they had yesterday, which further proves my point that you have to take those kids and develop them. Don't just put them out on the field. They're not ready for it.
We're not Superman. We can't fly around the earth and make things go back in time. So what's your plan going forward with this program?
You mean coach, with me coaching this particular team?
Approaching the league powers that be and saying this isn't working.
So I don't know. Maybe I could present your point to, look, let's make this 2 hours. We'll do the hour. We'll do a complete, almost like a clinic for an hour with both teams, work them out together, and then put them on the field and see what happens.
Well, I think you make the effort, you throw it out there, say this is, again, you kind of, just for people that don't know you there, you kind of run through a little bit of your resume, and then you try to force the issue.
Right.
And again, it's just a matter of presenting it of what's the alternative. Continue doing. The kids are not going to get better from playing one game a week.
Right.
I mean, that's the facts. It's what we talk about all the time. Once you get to the high school level and you're playing every day, that's where you really can see some acceleration in performance. Prior to that, it's only those kids that are going out and doing something on their own during the week. It's even the biggest travel programs, they're only together maybe one practice during the week, maybe two.
Yeah.
At top. So, it's about doing stuff on their own. So hopefully they pay attention. They see that I guess the first thing is seeing that there's an issue. Recognizing there's an issue, just like anything else in life, recognize that there's an issue. And then, okay, let's not put our blinders on and just forge ahead. Let's say, how do we get this? How do we improve the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'll present it and see what happens. But let's face it, I'm an outsider just lending a hand to try and help. So I'll do whatever they want me to do. But to your point, I will make my suggestions that, hey, why don't we try this? If they say, well, no, this and that, all right, well, let's do the best we can with what we have, basically.
Right. Okay. Well, that sounds fun and exciting. You're to be dipping your toe back into the town ball level. Hopefully the parents and the kids recognize that you do have a lot to offer in that respect, and they listen and take at least some of the ideas of what you're saying and start to incorporate it. Otherwise, if not, we will continue to see the decline of town ball as we've been seeing for how many years at this point. And the kids that we get at our level will the pool will continue to shrink, and we'll continue to have players that we are forced to keep at our level. At least, again, we're in different situations. The school district I'm in versus you've got a lot more population to pull from generally, but for most of your regular schools that only can pull from their local area, you're going to continue to see that decline. Yeah. And we've seen it, not just the team that I coach. I saw it across the board with teams that we played against this year. There was almost every team had players that probably shouldn't have been on it.
Yeah.
Probably weren't ready to be on that level. And yet you can't run a high school season with 11 kids.
Right. And one of the other things that I will bring up, and again, I don't know how this will be met, but I think it's worth trying. One of the things that I noticed was that a lot of the parents would go behind the backstop and be shouting out stuff to their kids, which I would never put up with. But again, it's a different animal from where I am, so I got to be careful. So I just kept my mouth shut. I let them do what they're doing. Okay. So I'm thinking, and again, this will only work if they let me do it. Have the parents come on the field when I'm at a practice, when I'm working with the boys. Okay. And let the parents see what we're doing, how we're doing. So this way, if you're going to be behind the backstop yelling something, at least you're going to be yelling something that is beneficial to the kid.
I'll do you one better. Invite them to jump on out on the field with you when you're doing practicing.
Well, that's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah. Not just so that they can see what you're doing, but have them be involved with it too.
Yes.
You have 15 kids and you have 7 people there to help and pay attention to what everybody's doing. As long as everybody's on the same page, it can only be a good thing.
Right.
So yeah, got to get them. You want to be involved? Be involved.
Exactly.
All right. So our special guest this week, really, really excited to speak with this young man. Didn't know anything about him until you got him signed on as a guest and started doing my research into who he was and where he's been. And just really, really excited to speak with him because he kind of puts together everything, and I'll say everything that we've talked about over the 2.5 years we've been doing this show. His name's Nick Lorusso. He was the 9th round pick this year, 9th round draft pick of the hated New York Mets. And he's somebody that, quite frankly, is living the dream. It's a stupid expression. People generally use it in a negative way. How you doing today? Living the dream. And it's as a negative of like, yeah, I'm not really happy what I'm doing. Well, this kid's doing it. Drafted out of college, not out of high school. So he is not that young in terms of a draft pick goes, but compared to fossils like you and me, obviously very young. You like that I included myself in there and didn't just take the shot at you.
We're getting better.
So, like I said, 9th round pick, which is right halfway through in the draft, gives him a great shot to actually make it to the higher levels. And just really excited to talk to him about his story, how he got here, and how he's doing.
Yeah, I received a text message from Joseph Guzman, who was a guest on the show. He said, I got a guy for you. He's the 9th round draft pick of the New York Mets. And right away, I thought, wow, this is awesome. We could take this from, if we need to take it from Little League, travel ball, high school, college, we could take it right through just to show everybody what Nick had to do to get to where he is. And I was all excited. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to him.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's bring on 9th round draft pick, Nick Lorusso. So how you doing today, Nick?
Doing well, doing very well. Thank you guys for having me.
So, Nick, congratulations, number one, on being drafted in this year's Major League Draft. You're from Monroe, Connecticut, and you went to Masuk High School, and at Masuk you played multiple sports, baseball, basketball, football, right? And you lettered in all 3 sports, but baseball you lettered 3 years, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you were also the captain of the team twice.
Yep.
So
that is correct.
So everybody had a pretty good idea that you were a pretty good ball player back when you were in high school.
Yeah, I would say that, especially in Connecticut. There's especially in a small town like Monroe and Masuk High School, we only had a select few athletes. So yeah, definitely pretty easy to pick out.
Okay, let me ask you this. We'll start off with this because again, this pops right out at me because I'm a big proponent. You played baseball, basketball, football, so obviously multi-sport athlete. How do you feel that helped you to get where you are now?
I feel like it was a huge, kind of developmental piece to, baseball, what other sports had to offer, whether it be, basketball being, some of the most athletic people, that you surround yourself with, and the ability for quick twitch athletes like guys who play third base like myself. And then football was definitely a huge piece in terms of the mental toughness. And, you got to have that in terms of, baseball. And, I'm one to say that baseball is a game of failure. And, the ones who are mentally tough, definitely tend to last longer. So definitely I picked little pieces of parts from different sports. So it definitely helped me along the way.
Yeah, that's, I agree with you 100% what you just said about the failure part of baseball. It's unlike any other sport where it's a big part of it. And it's one of the things that we hammer home to young players, that you're going to fail. It's okay to fail, and try to help them through what it takes to overcome that failure. And if you could play another sport, football, like you said, being one of them, I mean, it'll just help you leaps and bounds with baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like football was definitely, the driving force for me. I started when I was in like third grade, and it definitely took off from there. Our coach just hammered away at mental toughness and, putting the team first. And I feel like, that definitely goes a long way with baseball, and rather not focusing so much on results, but rather than, just focusing on the team, focusing on having fun is definitely something that, will help the baseball process and the failure process more enjoyable.
So let me ask you on that note. Now, I know a lot of kids these days are, I don't even know if it's kids, a lot of the parents or coaches feel like baseball is 11 months out of the year these days. So how did you balance out playing the other sports along with still keeping up with everybody that was playing, the million travel ball games a year?
Yeah, I would definitely say focus on what you enjoy the most and hone in your craft on that. I started in the weight room when I was at a pretty young age, and I feel like that's something that's definitely a driving force. But I would just say be an athlete first before you'd classify as, a baseball player, football player, basketball player. I always love the term athlete first, because whether you create kind of your own, how you want to say, athletic build, playing these sports such as basketball, football, and baseball, whether you can learn from different things from each sport will definitely help you a long way, whatever sport you do choose.
So, I mean, I find that interesting that you would say that, because that's something that, again, I think that younger coaches and dad coaches and amateur coaches need to understand, especially with the little guys from, whatever age 5 to, I feel, to age 13, is that we're trying to create athletes first. Okay, so a lot of baseball coaches, youth baseball coaches, will jump right into nuts and bolts and complicated situations that they're trying to teach baseball players at a very young age, when I think that if we focused on developing the athlete and building the athlete, then the rest will take care of itself when they get older.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And, like you said, just, as long as you have the, athletic ability, as long as you work hard at that, and I feel like train, different muscle patterns, and whether that be in different sports, I feel like everything else will take care of itself.
Let's talk a little bit about your college years, because I find this to be a little interesting. So after high school, you went to Villanova for 2 years. Then from Villanova, you went to Maryland, right? Your sophomore year was a COVID year. Is that right?
Yep.
So
yep, correct.
How did that impact you? What did you do?
Yeah, definitely a very challenging time. So, I had my freshman year at Villanova, ended up being a huge success, Big East freshman of the year. Then moving on to sophomore year, there were a lot of expectations for us, and what we were willing to accomplish, and we actually ended up beating the number 3 Arizona State team at the time with they ended up having the number 1 pick in Spencer Torkelson. So we were riding high, and then obviously COVID within the month, shut everything down. So, we resulted in, quarantining for a while. And then, as things started to slow down just a little bit, they put together kind of a Connecticut league where some of the best players in Connecticut would just play, about 2-3 games a week. So I did that for the rest of the summer and leading up to the fall when, I'd eventually go back to Villanova for my junior year.
Well, I just want to go back to something that you said because you kind of brushed over it, and I think it needs a little bit more emphasis, is you were the first player in 25 years to be named the Big East Freshman of the Year. That's huge. I mean, that's quite an honor and is a testament to your ability. So congratulations on that.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So was there any? I just got to ask something like this. So after that season or during that season, was there any bites at that point from the league, or you still didn't really hear anything?
After freshman year, you're saying?
Yeah. After being named Player of the Year.
Yeah. No, there were some talks. I had an interview with the Padres who, because I was young at the time and I wasn't eligible till the following year, and they just said, hey, we're going to keep an eye on you, just keep doing what you're doing, but nothing serious like my years at Maryland.
So again, like I started to say before, so you weren't drafted out of high school. Again, like Dave just alluded to, you weren't drafted out of Villanova. So my feeling is from what I know about you is that obviously you wanted to get drafted. That was kind of your goal. You wanted to get drafted. What made you decide to go to Maryland to try and get drafted?
Yeah, of course. Definitely a developmental piece. They have one of the best hitting coaches in the country in Matt Swope, and kind of his philosophies is something that I really enjoyed. I had two friends that went to Maryland at the time that I played travel ball with, in Luke Schliger and Bobby Zamarzalak. Luke, obviously, he was drafted this past year in the 6th round, and Bobby is, another absolutely phenomenal baseball player. And those two kind of told me what the culture was like and how they love to win, and they were playing into the postseason and deep into the postseason, and with that comes a lot of eyes and a lot of scouts watching the games, and something that I didn't feel like we had at Villanova my junior year. So I felt like after that year, I felt like it was best for me in terms of what I wanted to do with my dreams and live that out. I feel like that was best for me.
So you mentioned Coach Swope as a great hitting instructor, but now when you first went there, was Coach Swope the head coach or was Coach Vaughn the head coach?
Yeah, Vaughn was the head coach both my years that I was there, and then obviously drafted this past year. Coach Vaughn got the head coaching job at Alabama, and then Matt Swope was promoted head coach.
I know that you mentioned that you went there for the hitting instruction from Coach Swope, but what was it like playing for Coach Vaughn?
Yeah, definitely, a very wise man who, really hones in on the little things in baseball. And I feel like, he taught, not only baseball tips, but, life tips in general. And I feel like that just speaks on the kind of man and the kind of leader that he was, and that he'll continue to be at Alabama. And, he was just a phenomenal, coach in terms of developmental pieces, whether that be for, the hitters, whether he'd be giving out key pieces of information, or positionally for guys like catchers and infielders. But, he was definitely a great coach to play for, and someone we love to battle for.
So the thing that gets me is that you mentioned that you went there for hitting because of Coach Swope. So your first year, you batted .322, 17 doubles, 15 home runs, 37 walks. In 2023, you absolutely destroyed it. Okay, you played in 61 games, 379, 20 doubles, 2 triples, 26 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 34 walks. Then you also led the entire NCAA in RBIs with 105. And in just 2 seasons there, you became Maryland's RBI leader with 175 RBIs in 2 years. So obviously, Coach Swope had something to do with that. So what did he do? What did he do that was different from other coaches?
He honed in on this motor preference, kind of profile that, works. He works your body and how it wants to, move, and how your body prefers to move. So, I made some adjustments from the first year I was there, doing some things that he thought would have been better for this next year, whether that be, the balance points in my feet or where my hands start and my load. for hitting, and just he ultimately put me in the best position for how my body wanted to move, and with that came exceptional results. So I think the rest kind of took care of itself.
Right. And I don't want to make it sound like you weren't a good hitter before you went there, because obviously you were. However, it seemed like all of a sudden when you went there, things kind of went to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. He helped me in ways that I can't even, describe. And, he's actually coming out with a book relatively soon that explains this to a whole nother level. And, and I definitely feel like it is the future, and how hitting, and how not only hitting, but, people in general are going to start, thinking about their bodies and how their bodies actually want to move.
So what's interesting about that to me is I look at it like I have 3 or 4 different things that I believe need to be present in your swing. That's it. So basically what I do with my players is almost like what you were just explaining, where let the body move the way the body is going to move, just as long as we can achieve these things. That I really don't care how you get there. But I'm kind of trying to simplify what Coach Swope did with you. Is that something like what he's doing? In other words, not everybody hits the same. So you have to make everybody understand how their body moves and what they need to do, and it's an individualistic thing.
You absolutely nailed it right there. And I feel like, especially during my time in high school, it felt like, instructors and, people all over the internet wanted to focus in on one specific way to hit a baseball. But the reality is it's not. And, for guys like Aaron Judge and guys like Jose Altuve, where the size difference is extremely, different, you're not all going to hit the same. And I feel like, especially, as young kids and especially high schoolers, how your body wants to move and how your body gets there. I don't think it really matters in terms of how you get there, like you were saying.
Had you made up your mind that you definitely needed a better opportunity than Villanova was granting you, and you started looking for schools, or was it more happenstance that you knew these other players that were at Maryland? Like, did you have other schools that you were already looking into?
I had a couple other schools, but I really did focus in on Maryland because I did know Luke and Bobby obviously there, and my own hitting coach at home was very close with the coaches at the University of Maryland at the time.
Okay. Oh, that's excellent. No, because there's a lot, whether it be, colleges, obviously the whole thing with the transfer portal, there's a lot of, obviously pluses and minuses from a team standpoint, and some coaches love it, some coaches hate it, blah, blah, blah. But even going back to playing travel ball, and they, coaches preach about dedication and loyalty and whatnot. And my experience with a lot of programs is that loyalty is a one-way street from the coach's perspective. Now, you were probably, without just blowing smoke at you, you were probably always one of the better players, if not the best player on your team. So probably not a big concern. But if you're a player that's, 9th, 10th, 11th on the roster, I never had any problem with somebody looking for a better opportunity. And even with me, with my kids, and when I played, I played a little bit of college ball, and I purposely went to a school that I knew I was going to get an opportunity to play. I didn't care, quite frankly, if the team won the league, but I wasn't playing. That didn't do anything for me, So I don't know if, some of that kind of fell into you were going to play probably almost anywhere that you went, but I understand that mentality of looking out for what's best for you, because at the end of the day, you only got one shot at this, right? You're only going to be 20 years old one time and be able to move on. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you nailed it. I definitely do agree that, the transfer portal does favor those bigger schools, but, like you said, and it definitely was an instance for myself where going into college, I wanted to play right away. Like, I didn't want to, sit. I didn't want to, redshirt, do any of that, because I felt like, that would kind of hurt the developmental process, so I went to Villanova knowing that, okay, I could kind of not so much be the guy here, but in an instance, have a chance to turn a program around that wasn't exactly, doing a whole lot of winning at the time, but I was on the field playing. And I feel like that was definitely something that drove me and is something that is huge in the developmental process.
So I think what's important that you said there was that you need to go someplace where you're going to play. It's another very difficult thing with younger baseball players is to make them understand that you are, basically what it comes down to is that you are what you are. So if you're a Division III player type player or a Division II player, that's what you are. You're better off going to a Division III or Division II school because that's where you're going to play, rather than push the envelope and try and get to a D1 just so that you could say I'm a D1 player, but meanwhile you're sitting on a bench. I
totally agree. And something that I would harp on to younger kids is you got to kind of push that ego aside in order to, do what's best for you and what's more important to you. Do you want to play, or do you want to just listen to, the chatter of what other people think of you? And for me, it was always kind of, I want to play. And I just, I love this sport so much that, I'm just willing to play every day, no matter what, anybody thinks of me.
One of my former players, he went to a junior college, played his 2 years, finished, and he was looking for another school to go to finish out his college career. And he just got picked up by a Division I school.
Yeah, it's crazy that the times have definitely changed because, when I went to college, I envisioned myself staying at Villanova all 4 years or 3 years. And, in today's day and age where, people can just hop in the transfer portal, it is important to, show that you can play and play consistently every day. Because, even if you are a Division II, Division III player, JUCO player, being on the field and showing that you can, build on what you, started at is definitely something that, maybe future Division I coaches are going to be like, hey, we see the growth of this kid. Now we can take him and, they can get what they wanted all along.
It also means that coaches can't rest on their laurels either. That's the whole thing. If you get somebody that commits to you in their junior and high school and the transfer portal's not there, you don't have to put a lot of effort in with that kid because he's more or less stuck. So now that things have changed like that, I think it can only help it's going to help the players, which will ultimately help the programs because the coaches are going to have to do the right thing.
Yep, I totally agree.
So one of the other things that I wanted to get into was you used to pitch. You actually pitched in college also, along with you were a two-way player, which is kind of rare. Mm-hmm. And when you were pitching, you were touching 90 miles an hour.
Yeah, I would say junior year of high school was the first time I ever hit 90, and then kind of built on that, as I went into my freshman year at Villanova.
Okay. And the reason why I bring that up is because your position is third base, right? With a 90 mile an hour arm, which you need to have that to be able to play that position at the highest levels. What, if anything, did you do to develop your arm?
I would go back to, athlete first. I feel like everything, kind of started from that. And whether it be throwing a football, almost every day with friends or, just, like I said before, the weight room, definitely, starting that at probably a younger age than most kids definitely helped me, keep my arm, keep my shoulder healthy. And, was able to, both play third, shortstop, and, pitch on a daily basis.
So you didn't do anything specific. So where I was kind of pushing that was into any like long toss or anything like that to build strength in your arm. I mean, I'm sure you long toss. It's just how much.
Yeah, absolutely. I would long toss about 100 yards. Probably at the time, I would say about twice a week, and more, kind of working on, throwing a ball as hard as I can across the diamond to kind of work up, like the speed of the arm and, how the arm, is going to move properly. But nothing out of the ordinary where I would say, people are doing like all these crazy kind of workouts. I wouldn't say I was doing any of that.
Okay. So basically just long tossing and then just working on your we'll say, regimen of just throwing across the diamond.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mixing in, of course, with some, band, a little bit of weighted balls, but nothing crazy.
Oh, the weighted balls makes me cringe.
Yeah. I definitely wasn't a big believer in the weighted ball program growing up. And I feel like, that's something I'm not huge into, but definitely something that, the Mets are pushing towards.
Oh, really? That's interesting, because for younger players especially, I just the thought of a younger player. Now, maybe it's okay because, your body is fully developed at this point. And for younger players, the thought of them taking a weighted ball, and I've seen it, and try and throw that thing as hard as you can, I look at it and my elbow starts to hurt just watching them.
Yeah, no, I was never into that, and I was kind of told that at that age that, it was not particularly right to be doing that, especially, as my body was still developing.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I guess the point of, this whole thing about the 90 miles per hour was that, again, people need to understand that if you want to be a Division I shortstop, third baseman, this is what coaches are looking for in your arm strength at those positions. It's not only pitchers that have to throw that hard. And I mean, I guess I would venture to say that most Division I position players probably pitched when they were younger anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were probably the better athletes.
Correct.
Did you just get to the point where you knew pitching just wasn't your ticket? Is that kind of how that broke down?
Yeah. It was more for me the idea of, pitch, because I was a starter. It was more the idea that I wasn't big into, pitching and having to not play for 4 or 5 days. I was, a big kind of, I want to play every day. Like, let's keep going. And then I kind of fell in love with, kind of the idea of hitting and, what comes with that. And ultimately, I felt like I was always a better hitter than pitcher.
Right, I was going to say, and I mean, me as a coach, the way you hit, there's no way I would have you on that mound. I want you on the field every single day.
Yeah, definitely saves the arm too. After I stopped two-weighing, that was definitely something big this past year that I felt my best.
Good. Yeah, that can only help you with playing your defense as well, and then obviously getting all the reps that you need in practice for hitting and all the game reps. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about what you've done to strengthen your arm to get you to the level that you're at. What about the hitting? Before you got to Maryland, take us through like what you would do to build yourself to be a better hitter.
Yeah, I was, my dad was a huge proponent of, the developmental process and how I could be my best at a young age. It's a funny little story. We had like a swing set in the backyard, and he kind of, bulldozed that over and put together a batting cage for me. So, I'm extremely grateful for that, and something that I can just, walk out of my house and, go hit every day was something that was huge, whether it be just off a tee, at a young age, or whether he'd be like flipping to me, using the machine. It's just, I would say the consistency of hitting is what led me to, become the best version of myself.
I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I want younger kids to understand this. Now, you mentioned that your dad put a batting cage in your backyard. How often did you go out there and hit on your own without dad saying to you, "Hey, Nick, come on, let's go hit. Nick, come on, let's go hit"?
Yeah, it was almost every day, whether it be just myself or him. It was mostly me, the one that, I was the one that was kind of like, "Hey, Dad, let's go," kind of because I was that energetic kid, but kind of because I understood what I wanted to be and, what I wanted to become, wasn't going to be, settling for just hitting like once a week. And I felt like, the more and more you do something, the more and more you kind of enjoy doing it. So I would definitely say to those kids, work on it as much as you can if you want to be, at the level that you want to say that you're at.
And I think that that's extremely important, that people understand that, especially young players, that nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself.
I totally agree.
And did you have, when you were, I don't know, did you have an aha moment where you knew, or you really felt like you belonged at the highest level, whether it was like, I don't know, in high school playing against somebody hitting against somebody who was like being scouted, or like an all-star game, or did you have any type of like moment like that?
Yeah, it was actually relatively new. It was in this past regional when we played Wake Forest. We ended up, we faced Rhett Lauder, who was this year's number 7 pick. And I ended up hitting 2 home runs off him. And, everybody was, kind of, hyping him up before that game. And for good reason, too, because he is one hell of a pitcher, man. And he's going to have tremendous success in the MLB one day. But, definitely getting him twice was something where I'm like, okay, I belong.
That's awesome. I'm sorry, I'm a little giddy. You're just, you're living the dream. You are all of us at some point that played ball. That was, this is what I want to do. And you being able to be there and going through all this is just, it's amazing to be able to hear these stories of how you got to where you got, Yeah,
it is something truly special, and something that, I don't take for granted at all.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we hammer home that, this just doesn't fall into your lap, that there's work involved, there's dedication, and, let's face it, not everybody that puts in the work and is dedicated and does all of that stuff does make it. But I can guarantee you that the people that don't put in the work will not make it. So that's very, very important for somebody to understand. And I think I want to take this in a little different direction, because Dave and I are very big on this. We talk about it all the time. So we've talked about your arm. We've talked about your hitting. Let's talk about your mental side of hitting. I'm sure that in college they probably hammered that home with you, and I want everybody to get a little glimpse of what that was like.
Yeah, it was definitely an important piece, and a piece that I tried to train, as much as I possibly can. Obviously, you go 3 for 10 and you're a Hall of Famer. That's what they say. This is a game of total failure, and something that, I've learned already in pro ball. It's definitely something that, is not easy, and something that you got to live with. And I would just say that the things that I would do to clear my head and make myself feel a lot better is, if you're having a tough day or struggling mentally, like go watch different highlights of yourself, whether that be when you were younger, or look at pictures that made you feel your best and feel your happiest, because that sparks something in your brain. And I feel like that's something that I would always do when I was struggling. I'd go back and watch highlights of myself, and definitely go back and watch the highlights that I did of me homering off Rhett Lauder, kind of reminding myself every day that, this is something that's real and something that I've done. So definitely something, simple like that is definitely, goes a long way with mental health.
It reminds me of a story, and I believe it was Tony Gwynn that said it. May not have been, but whoever it was, he was an elite major league hitter. And he was talking about guys that go and look at film of themselves when they didn't do well. And he said, why would you want to look at what you did wrong? He said, look at highlights of when you did well. And that's what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would do like little things, in college, like listening to little clips of meditation and clearing the mind, because hitting, I feel like, is 90% mental. If you go up to the plate with confidence, you're going to have a lot more success than going up to the plate saying that, oh man, I got to get a hit here, rather than, just letting your mind go and kind of doing your own thing. But definitely for sure, the highlights were something that helped me through some tough times.
Right. It's as simple as something that you just said where I got to get a hit here. Okay. No, the way we do this is not that I got to get a hit here, is when you're self-talking. Okay. What you're doing is you're saying you are going to get a hit here. This is the self-talk that we want to have in our head, is you are going to get a hit here. So, yeah. And again, it's a very simple thing, just changing the words around. But it's a much better way of thinking it, and you'll be more successful.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not even so much like the hits. It's a matter of, kind of telling yourself like what's an attainable goal that, I can achieve and control, and that's hitting the ball hard. You can't say the words I'm trying to say. You can't, you can't force a hit. You can't, you can hit it as hard as you want right at somebody and you'll lose confidence. And to think about that really makes you wonder, like, why these kids, they get so down on themselves when they could hit the ball as hard as they possibly can. And that's all they were trying to do, but they don't get a hit out of it. So I feel like, taking the results away and, just focusing on what's attainable this at bat and, that being, just hitting the ball hard and helping your team win is all that you can do.
Yeah, well, that's a friend of the show, Steve Springer. He's a former major leaguer. He's a scout right now for the A's, I believe. That's what he talks about. Batting average is the most misleading stat in the game. Basically, just if you hit the ball hard, that's your job. Hit the ball hard every time. That's your job. Obviously, the law averages are going to work in your favor. But yeah, you rip a screaming line drive and the third baseman happens to get his glove on it, or you hit a little blooper that happens to fall, in no man's land between second base and center field or something like that. Like, which one do you feel better about?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very strange game.
It reminds me of, this just happened a few weeks ago. One of my high school players playing summer ball, he was struggling. He was 0 for whatever. And his dad called me and said he's struggling, da-da-da-da-da. So I said, get him on a Zoom call, went through the whole thing. Again, what I just said about, your self-talk, went through that. But again, something that I learned from Springer was, and I said this to the kid, I said, what I want you to do is, because he had a game the next day, I said, what I want you to do is go up to bat with the mindset, I'm going to line out 4 times. Just hit it hard somewhere. Okay, coach. So he played his game Saturday. His dad called me Sunday. He went 3 for 4. Now, I'm not saying that because I did that he went 3 for 4. He might have just had a good day, whatever. But the thing is, if he wasn't thinking that way, I feel that probably wouldn't have happened.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And, like you said, it's weird how the game works and how like a simple way you think can transform how much confidence you have at the plate. I'm sure that he wasn't feeling his best, going into that game, but, with the mindset of, okay, I'm just going to try to line out, kind of, I'm sure went through his mind is, I'm just going to try to hit the ball hard here, and that's all he can control.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. And I believe, and we talk about this a lot on the show. I believe that that's pretty much the whole game, is how you approach it. All right, let's face it. You have to be an athlete. We spoke about that already, that we're creating athletes. But once you're an athlete, once you get to your level, pretty much everybody has the same athletic ability. So what separates Nick from the rest of the guys is going to be, in the end, the way you approach things, the way you think about things. That's my belief.
And you are 100% right. And, what separates others is the ability to, flush different games. And I always love to say it's you versus the guy in the mirror, man. It is going to be you versus you. And if you start comparing up to others, and you're going to drive yourself insane. And I feel like as long as you try to be a better version of yourself every day, that's all that you can control, and that's the best way that you're gonna, move up and get to where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even difficult with high school players to make them understand that forget about flushing the game from yesterday. We're trying to get them to flush the last pitch. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard because again, you gotta crawl before you could walk. So we're trying to get them to forget the last pitch and move on. And believe it or not, I mean, well, you've been there, you know, it's very hard to teach a 16, 17-year-old kid that, all right, you made an error, whatever the case was, that's fine. Everybody makes errors, but let's put that behind us and let's move forward. Otherwise, you're going to do it again.
Exactly. And this game has an interesting way of, finding you when you're down. And, if you don't flush it, I'm sure it'll keep piling on you. And that's the difference that I've seen in, the best college players, the best, pro players is, they can control the stuff in between their ears and they can just absolutely, focus on, what's important that day and the ability to move on quickly.
All right. So, and I have to ask you this question because I want to know. It's not so much for our listeners, but I want to know. So you hosted a regional in 2022 at Maryland. Just give me an idea of what that was like, because again, there's players that make it to Division I baseball tournament, but there's not very many schools that host a regional tournament. That had to be unbelievable.
It was an unbelievable feeling. The team that we had was something truly special, and I think now 7 guys in that lineup were pro players now, so it was definitely something special. And just the crowd is kind of what made the memories and everything like that. Being one of 16 schools to do it every year, that year was unbelievable and something that Maryland's never done in their program's history. But just the roar of the crowds and the energy that it brought to us as players was something truly special and something that you really had to see.
I mean, like you say, the roar of the crowds, it's probably, I don't know, 3-4 times as many people at those games than you're actually seeing now at your low A games. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. Not many schools get that opportunity. And again, it's just a testament to how good that team really was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were Big Ten regular season champs for the first time in over 50 years, I want to say it was. And now 7 of those 9 players in the lineup are now playing professionally. We had 3 or 4 pitchers that are now playing professionally. It was something truly special and one of the best teams that will ever go down in Maryland history.
In terms of your development, one thing I know we've been jumping around, but I want to kind of go back to this because something else that I've seen, I coach at the JV level. Jimmy coaches at the JV level. I know what I've seen only once or twice, but I've read a lot of commentary about this type of thing. You played your whole high school career, right, at your high school. I know that there is a number of players that feel like their better path is to kind of forego playing in high school and just focus on the travel ball and going all over the country to showcases and camps and stuff like that. You want to talk a little bit about your decision to stay with your program?
Yeah. During my time in high school, it was, we would start around March and end in early June if we, happen to make the playoffs that year. Definitely something that I enjoyed because I was playing with, some of my best friends that I grew up with all throughout high school. And I feel like, those memories that were made were something truly special. But then, after the high school season, end of June all the way through August was the time where I did travel ball. And, that's when I went to different, showcase tournaments and all of that. So I'm not too familiar on how, travel ball works nowadays. But that was my path and how I pursued it.
Okay. Yeah, I like I said, I've seen it, and it just seems like a shame because again, balancing out the whole best opportunity to get noticed versus at the end of the day, we're still playing games. And to kind of forego playing with those kids that you've probably been playing with for 8 years at that point, between local league, junior high, high school. It just seems like a shame to me. And it just seems like maybe a little misplaced priorities. I know not everybody needs to take the same path and all that, but our focus with the show is on youth development, and just feel like a lot of times there's undue pressure that's put on these players at a very young age that just sometimes you just got to let them play.
Yeah, I feel like high school was the perfect opportunity for me to kind of just let loose and, play with, again, like I said, some of my best friends, and just, it felt like backyard baseball all over again.
Right.
Not so much putting pressure on myself to, perform in front of these coaches at, different showcase tournaments. And like you said, that must add an enormous amount of pressure for these kids that, they definitely don't need to be having at such a young age. And I feel like if we could take away all that pressure and all that stress, that these kids would, be playing, like I said, backyard baseball again, and would truly be showing what they're capable of doing.
Where did you play your travel ball, if you don't mind me asking?
I played for the clubhouse. It was out of Fairfield, Connecticut.
I'll tell you a quick story about Clubhouse. So this is going back quite a few years ago. I'm going to say probably about 7 years ago. We're playing in a tournament, and we're playing Clubhouse. And the game starts, my guy is on the mound, and I think like the first 3 batters took him over the center field scoreboard. Okay. And it was just a slaughter from the onset of the game. And I'm watching and I'm saying, this is a different animal. So I walked out to the mound. It's just going pretty bad out here, isn't it? So he goes, yeah, coach, not good. So I said, all right, listen, I'm not going to waste another pitcher on this team. So
he said, hit the next 3 guys and get out of here.
I said, so you're going to have to take one for the team and, hope this thing ends pretty quick. But that was my first experience with that organization. And that team, from what the coach, because I spoke to the coach after the game, and what he said to me is that almost everybody on that team was either a Division I committed player already, a D2 committed player, or a pro prospect. And let me tell you something, you're playing for that organization at that level. Again, it just goes to show why you were drafted into professional baseball. That's a great organization.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That was, again, some of the most, special moments of my life were spent there. And, again, the relationships that were made and the friends that were made, because, like you said, I think 12, of those players went on to play Division I baseball. A couple were drafted out of high school, and all still, very close with one another. So I feel like, again, the relationships made and, making each other better each and every day on that team was something truly special, and something that definitely, impacted me a lot.
Right. And I'm sure that their training, whatever training you went through with that organization, is probably top notch. So you probably, it helped with your development. And again, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because not all travel organizations are like that, where, they have the interest of their players in mind, and they're helping you to get better.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's a shame that happens. And, I do wish that, programs would prioritize, the developmental process, a little bit more. But that's something that was major for, the clubhouse's philosophy, was kind of developing players and into becoming, not only the best baseball players, but the best humans that, they could possibly be, because, that goes a long way as well.
Right. And I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of the problem with that is not so much that they don't focus on it. First of all, there's way too many travel organizations. That's the first problem. The second one is that a lot of them, and well, don't let me say a lot of them, but the ones that don't focus on development are that way because I don't think they know how. They think that they're just going to put a bunch of guys together. They're going to put them on a field, hit them a bunch of ground balls a couple times a week, let them swing in the cages, and then they're going to go out and compete. And that's not development. But if there were less travel teams, which I believe there should be, I believe that there should be many, many more kids playing recreational, whether it be Little League, Cal Ripken, or whatever, because that's what they're better suited for. And it would make that a better place for younger players than to have all of these travel teams where, again, I just used an example. My team that I had that year that played against Clubhouse, it was apples and oranges. We weren't ready for something like that. As things went on, the organization got a little bit better in terms of that, developing players and stuff, but it's a different animal. And a lot of people just don't know how to develop players.
Yeah, and I'll go back to, what I said earlier in the show is I feel like playing is definitely one of the most important pieces of, kind of the developmental stage. The more you play, the more experience you get. And like you said, with all these travel teams and with all these players maybe stacked up on one team, not many players get the opportunity to, get as many ABs as, the next kid in line. So definitely I would say, the most important thing is playing, and wherever that may be, I feel like that's, best suited for, the developmental process.
Yeah. And I mean, also, if travel baseball is going to continue the way it's going right now, they should almost have different levels. So in other words, again, I'll go back to the example of the organization that I was coaching with at the time. They should be in a different quote unquote division or a different level than like a Clubhouse where I don't care how you want to do it, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, AA, A, whatever. This way, to your point, if you're, a B-level team, you're going to compete against B-level players and you're going to get better. If you take a B-level team and you put it against a AA level team, well, those kids on the B team are not going to get better. They're just going to get slaughtered.
Neither are the kids on the AA team.
Exactly. And yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree on that part. It was interesting for our developmental process because at the time, that Division I team, we were all a bunch of 16-year-olds playing in 18U baseball, and maybe it may not have been the best 18U teams, but the ability for us at a young age to play against older kids definitely helped with the developmental process in how eventually we would go about playing in at these Division I schools and professional opportunities that some of the high schoolers did get.
Just to switch directions a little bit here, you're with Joseph Guzman and the Empowerment Sports Group, right? You want to talk a little bit about how you got involved in him? He's a friend of the show, somebody that's been a prior guest of ours. Talk a little bit about how you got hooked up with him.
And a great guy.
Oh, yeah. He is absolutely the man. Me and him have connected this past year that I've been working with him. And, he saw me my last year play at the University of Purdue. It was one of our last weekend series. He ended up meeting my dad because I believe he had a player that was on Purdue at the time that he represented. And he ended up seeing me and kind of how I was in between on, different agents. And I didn't have one specific one that I wanted to go with yet. He ended up talking to my dad. I got a chance to meet him. And like you said, he's absolutely a great guy, really works for his players, and is someone that, I felt like could represent me very well in my future.
Awesome. And then last thing, just again, this is almost a little selfish of living through your experiences. Talk about when you got the call.
Yeah, it was definitely a stressful day, and I'm sure Joseph will tell you the same thing. Stressful day kind of leading up to it. Had some phone calls in the morning, thinking everything was going to go well, thought everything was going to go smoothly, kind of hearing chatter, before the second day of the draft actually started that I was going to be around the 5th or 6th round range. And then the 7th round ended, and we didn't get a phone call, and we were starting to, sweat a little bit. We were like, oh man, like what's going on? But as the eighth round kind of came, phone calls started ripping. I think there was a point at where I think it was like 10 teams at one time either called or texted about a number that I was agreeing with. And at the time, all of them, met the requirement of, what me and Joseph were looking for. So we're just saying yes to a bunch of these teams. And the Mets were the first one to pull the trigger. So definitely an amazing opportunity. And Joseph helped tremendously along the way.
That's awesome.
That's great. So I think that we're going to wrap this up with one simple question. If you had to give advice to young players, ages, again, like 5 to seniors in high school, what advice would you give them?
A couple of things. I would just say, number one, be an athlete first. Number two, it's okay to fail. And number three, just be you. Being yourself and learning different things is something that, helped me tremendously. But those three things, I think if you could just focus on those three things and doing it consistently and picking up on new habits and new information, that you'll be where you want to be.
Well, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit because you left out one thing and I'm sure you did this. You worked hard.
Absolutely. That's number 4, man. I mean, that's almost a given. If you don't work hard, that I truly believe that you won't, find success very much in life. And I feel like, those who work hard are given, more opportunities than others will.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Nick, I mean, number one, congratulations again. And you can guarantee that I'll be following you. I'll be watching you the whole way now. And, good luck to you. And again, what a fantastic accomplishment.
In full disclosure, okay, I am a Philly fan, die hard for life, but now I'm gonna have to have a little piece of me is gonna have to be a Mets fan. So, hopefully they can work out a trade somewhere along the lines. But if not, you got a fan for life here. And really appreciate everybody's time is valuable. Appreciate you just taking some time out of your schedule. I'm sure it's crazy. And I think you provide a lot of information for our listeners. And, truly appreciate you taking this opportunity to speak with us tonight.
Yeah, of course. Anything. And again, I appreciate you guys for having me.
All right.
And anytime, Nick. I hope that someday I'm going to reach out to you and I'm going to say, all right, listen, we got to get on the starting third baseman for the New York Mets. We spoke to him when he was in low A, and here he is now in the big league. So I look forward to that day.
Yes, sir. That's the goal.
2024, baby.
So, again, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yep. Anytime.
So there you have it. I think it was a great young man. What'd you think, Coach?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, here's a kid, touched on everything that we wanted to get to. Very humble. He seemed like just very humble. He didn't seem egotistical at all. I said it in the show. It's a great accomplishment what he achieved. You'd think that maybe he would be puffing his chest out a little bit about that, but very humble. I loved it.
Yeah, he still exudes that confidence that you have to have. And you think about his story, him taking a chance, and it was a big chance. He was a big fish at Villanova, and he took the chance to go to a different school after 2 years and start all over, because that's, make no mistake about it, that's what you're doing. You're taking a big chance. And yes, the coaches and whoever else you meet with, representatives from the school, they may be making some quasi promises to you, but don't kid yourself that they're not making that same promise to other people, because they never know who's going to accept at that point. So he definitely, it's the old expression, he bet on himself.
Yeah.
And in this case, it happened to turn out really, really well for him. And I'm just really, really happy to have been able to meet him and get to know him a little bit. And damn it, if he gets brought up to the show, I'm going to have to be at least one ninth of a Mets fan. I will have to root for their third baseman if he gets brought all the way up. And you know that hurts me as a diehard Philly fan.
Well, I mean, look, I'm a Yankee fan, but I like to look at myself like a New York guy. So I feel like that's one up for us in New York. One of our teams got a really good player, and hopefully he makes it there. At this point, I'm looking forward to even getting a little bit more up close and personal, that hopefully next year he's playing in high A, and right in our backyard we'll be able to go and watch him play in a smaller environment, which would be great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We've seen some major leaguers come through here on rehab assignments and things like that, but there hasn't been anybody that I've had any type of personal connection to, and now we've got Nick Lorusso. So fantastic thing. It was great to hear his story. Like I said, kind of taking that chance on himself and just personifying a lot of the things that we talk about in terms of the extra work that you have to do. It's not just showing up. If practice starts at 1 and you're showing up at 1 and you're going home at 3 and that's it. It's not going to get you. It's not going to get you to follow your dreams. Like anything else, it takes work. It takes sweat and blood and tears and all that stuff. And it takes understanding parents and people that are willing to put in that extra time and effort and money and all that. And no, it's really, really, really happy to hear this type of situation. And hey, he's not from our area, but he's fairly close to where we're based. So it is not quite a hometown kid, but nice to see somebody like that get some recognition, hard work paying off, and I'm really excited to watch where his career goes.
Yeah, I like the idea that he was a multi-sport athlete. You know how that always resonates with me, and I think that if people understand that there's an importance there of playing other sports. Because I know, as a matter of fact, I just had a player call me up a few days ago and telling me that he was taking the fall off from baseball because he's starting to feel a little burnt out and this and that. Now, he is a sophomore in high school. As a matter of fact, I think you coached him before he transferred. He was probably on your team as an 8th grader, and he wound up transferring to a different high school from yours. So anyway, he called me the other day and said he was taking time off, and I told him, I said, this is what I want you to do. And he was shocked. He was like, what do you mean, Coach? You mean you don't want me to keep playing? But I said, no. I said, go.
Yeah, you suck.
Oh, God. No, and I explained to him that this is something that you should be doing. Walk away from the game, okay? Clear your head and get that excitement back so that when you come back to play, you're ready to go instead of it being mundane and boring.
Well, yeah, there's nothing good is going to come out of forcing yourself to go and do something that your heart's not in. You know, if your heart's not in, your head's not going to be in it. You're not going to be able to maintain that positive mental attitude. There's no way you're going to give 100% effort. So it makes all the sense in the world. Take a break, recharge your batteries, and then come back hopefully better and stronger than ever. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so many good things about it. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around why other people wouldn't encourage kids to be multi-sport athletes. And, you know, again, I've seen so many statistics that say college level coaches look for that. You know, most guys that are professional players were multi-sport athletes. So I don't understand where that disconnect came. And people started saying, oh, no, wait a minute. If you're going to be a good baseball player, you have to play baseball 12 months out of the year. That's crazy.
You know where it came from.
Yeah.
It's from the money.
Yeah.
If you're not paying for my program for these 3 months, then I'm out the money. I'm sorry. You know, I kind of harp on that on a lot of these calls, but it is what it is. I strongly believe that driving force overcomes what's in the best interest of the kid. You've seen it.
Yeah.
Everybody sees it.
Yeah.
So that's where you can always trace it back to the money.
Yeah. And that's a shame. I mean, it really is a shame. You know, it puts all kinds of pressure on the kids. And I think that a lot of it, all of that can be traced back to even, well, obviously overuse injuries, kids pressing too hard, kids' mental performance suffering because, again, I believe that it becomes mundane. It becomes very repetitive. Oh, I got practice today. Yeah, I got baseball. Oh, yeah, I got a game tomorrow. Like, there's no excitement where if you went and you played basketball, then you played or football, then basketball, then you came back to baseball. There's going to be a little bit more excitement to get back on that field and start working again because you haven't done it for 4 months or whatever it was.
Well, yeah. Well, fortunately, in a case like Nick's, where he was able to do that, go and play those other sports, and then it brought him right back to he figured out that his true love was baseball, and he pursued that, and now look at where he is. So somebody that personifies having a positive mental attitude and always giving 100% effort, which is what everybody needs to do to have the best life that they can. Final thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, take a listen to what Nick has to say. A lot of good things there. I mean, I think that if most kids kind of followed his blueprint, I'm not saying that everybody's going to become a professional player or everybody's going to play at the University of Maryland, but I would say that that's a recipe for being the best that you can be at whatever level you can play. And the other thing, too, is that I believe that, along the way in Nick's career, literally, travel baseball, high school baseball, college baseball, there were people there that cared about him to be able to help him get to where he wanted to be, which only further proves my point that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.